We're live with Fortessa Latifi, author of Like, Follow, Subscribe, Influencer Kids, and the Cost of a Childhood Online. Welcome, Fortessa.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Can you just start by giving us a quick intro to you and your work?
Yes. So I'm Fortessa. I'm a journalist. I've written for places like Rolling Stone, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Teen Vogue, like everywhere you can think of. And for the last few years, I've been on this beat of influencer kids, mom influencers, and family vloggers. And my book that has been called A Heart Wrenching Expose into This World comes out in about 2 weeks.
Yee! Yes, so everyone can pre-order it now, and
Yes.
that way, when it does come out, it will be ready for them. It'll be, ready in their mailboxes. So I
Yeah.
wanted to start our conversation about this book with something I heard you say in another
Yeah.
interview about this book, which is there is no job on earth except for being a mom influencer or a family vlogger where a woman having a child is a bonus for her work. And
Yeah.
you point out, rightfully so, the data that show us just how much motherhood on average constrains women's careers, their
Yes.
opportunities. Can you see me? Did I just go dark?
You went dark for a second, yeah, and now I can't see you.
Let's
Oh,
have
there you are,
you
you're back, you're back.
there I am. And I just wanna put a number to this. There's a 2023 analysis that finds motherhood costs women about $500,000 relative to, fathers over the course of a career. And, I know you're a parent of a young child. I'm the mother of a 2.5-year-old. And, the cost for me is probably gonna be even higher if I really think about it. So to hear you frame this conversation around family vlogging and mom influencing, through this idea of it being a job that women can have where having a kid isn't a major career constraint just really struck me, and I wanted to ask you what you make of that.
I mean, not only is it not a constraint, but it's a bonus, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's almost like getting in another job a payment bonus to have another child as a family vlogger or a mom influencer, and, like, I had this thought a few weeks ago about how there is no other job where having a child is a benefit, and, like, I have an almost two-year-old, I'm pregnant, I'm 7 months no, 6 months pregnant right now. Also, if you're wondering what's up with my eye, I have hyperemesis gravidarum. I throw up so much that my eye looks like this. So, like, something that I think about is that I love my child and I will love my second child, but they are not benefits to my career. Like, they are detriments to my career. And that doesn't mean that I don't choose them and that I don't also choose my career, but, like, in no way did having them make my career better. But if I were a mom influencer or a family vlogger, it would make my career better because I would get more followers, I would get more sponsorships, I would get more brand deals, people would be more invested. And so when I look around at the country, the state of the country right now, especially for moms, where moms are statistically paid less than women who aren't moms, then that's not even to say how much they're paid less than men. And childcare, daycare costs can cost the equivalent of an entire salary. But then if you stay home for a few years and then you come back, it's like, well, what were you doing the last few years? You have this gap in your resume. Like, there's just no way to win. The middle class is vanishing, wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living. Like, I can understand, and I think it's quite dishonest of people to say, oh, well, I would never ever make that trade
Yeah.
because you can understand, at least I can understand, and I can sympathize with women, especially women and mothers who look around and say, well, what else am I going to do?
Mhm. You know, if one of the only ways to get ahead individually as a mother is to sell other women on a lifestyle that statistically constrains their professional lives and opportunities, I don't think that's an accident. That feels like a design. It feels like a
Yeah.
purposeful design. And you actually document in this book some of the rise behind mom influencing and the kind of infrastructure and institutional support that has enabled it. And I think it speaks a little bit to the design element, specifically in chapter 7. You have this chapter, it's called Bless This Brand Mormon
Yeah.
Zura's Trad Wives and the Invisible Labor of Motherhood. And I'd love to have you just give us a little tease of what you write about there.
Oh my gosh. I mean, if you've ever looked around and wondered why are so many influencers Mormon, like I've had this question for years and I mean, a long time and many resources to answer this question in this chapter. And I mean, it's just fascinating. I can get into a few of the reasons if you think that that would be
Yeah.
interesting. So, one of the reasons is that Mormon women tend to have kids very young and they tend to have a lot of kids. And we know that young mothers do really well online and mothers with lots of children do really well online. Also, there's this premium on beauty in the Mormon culture, on aesthetic outward beauty. I mean, we know that Utah has the highest rate of plastic surgery of any of the states in the United States. And so you have these young, beautiful, often thin, often blonde mothers who have a bunch of kids. And it's like, it's so fascinating because when you look back at the history of the Mormon church is very into scrapbooking and journaling as a way to preserve the stories of the people of its congregants. And so young women, especially young girls, are taught from a very young age to keep these incredibly detailed journals. And I don't know if you read Sherry Frankie's memoir, but
Mm,
she pulls a lot from her journal. And
mm.
it's like it's not out of character for a Mormon woman to have that detailed of a journal to pull from. So you have these young beautiful moms who are stuck in this patriarchal culture that says you're not supposed to work outside of the house, but they still have this ambition. And so mom influencing and family vlogging, I see it as kind of a way for them to exercise their ambition within the confines of the patriarchal structure of the Mormon religion.
And the church itself, you write about, is supporting this.
Yes, like explicitly.
Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I don't wanna yeah, it's just so intense. I mean, the Mormon Church is helping influencers get brand deals. It
Mhm.
is bringing influencers together and helping them network. It is explicitly giving them resources. I mean, it's fascinating because I found this commencement speech from 2007 at Brigham Young University, Hawaii, where the elder who was giving the commencement speech basically said, use the powers of the internet to spread the gospel. And it seems like that was really taken to heart. Like, I don't know any other religion or group of people who were able to so perfectly harness the power of the internet. Like, only 2% of Americans identify as Mormon, but, like, most influencers that you see are Mormon or Mormon adjacent.
Mm. I think this institutional support, it really does speak to, maybe the way the rise in which this kind of aspirational motherhood content isn't entirely natural. And just thinking about the broader ecosystem between where funding is and where tech algorithms operate to really elevate these forms of content in ways that ultimately reshape the culture, which is, obviously a huge theme in this book. And you focus a lot on how this plays out for the children of these influencers. And so I'm curious, what do you see in the reporting around those moments? You talk about pregnancies and births, but for the children, what are those moments that the algorithm seems to be amplifying?
So this was something that really struck me both as a mother and I think just like as a person is that multiple family vloggers and mom influencers went on the record with me and said that the content that does the best for them is content where their child is sick or sad or injured.
Mm,
Um, which I think many people had this kind of instinct that that was true, but to hear proof that it is, and also that these creators are consciously aware of it,
mm,
I think really changed for me the question of what does it mean to record this? Because if you know that your child being in distress is going to do really well content wise, like that changes your decision to pick up the camera or not.
mm. And I also wonder what then is the cost of that? You know,
Right.
not just for those children, but for a world in which a child's pain or trauma is the most monetizable aspect of, a mother's life. What does that mean for us culturally? I'm kinda just thinking out loud here, not that you have to have an answer, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that we are all voyeurs in some way, and we're all drawn to vulnerability, and it's the same way that we, like, slow down to look at car crashes, you
Mm,
know? Like, it's just human nature when other people are suffering that we wanna know, and especially, I think, when the person suffering is already part of a vulnerable population, like being a child. I mean, it was really troubling for me, and I also wonder, like, what it's like for the child to be filmed in that moment because I've thought about this and I've, like, wanted to experiment with it, but I can't bring myself to, but I wonder, like, what my daughter who's not yet 2 would do if she were crying because she's teething or she has a cold or, she's upset because, whatever, 2-year-olds get upset, and I took out my phone and was recording instead of kind of
mhm.
comforting her, like, I think she would, like, push it out of my hands. Like, I don't know. I wonder what her reaction would be. Like, as a mother, what do you make of that?
As you're talking about it, um, I'm thinking about holding up a camera and thinking of the way it detaches you from the moment that you're
Sure.
in. And that's one of the reasons, as much as I love taking photos and videos of my kid,
Yeah,
um, I'm very conscious of not pulling it out, even for my own record keeping,
same.
because I want to be there, and I know that as much as I wanna capture this time, I wanna savor it. And
It
as you were talking.
changes the moment, sorry. It really does, like, I notice when I take my camera out, like, my daughter, she acts differently, like, she poses a little bit or sometimes she'll stop doing whatever it is I wanted to take a video of, and it just makes me feel so guilty.
As you were saying that, the thing I realized I've been doing recently is trying to film my daughter when she doesn't know I'm filming, because
Yes.
she's completely different, right?
Yeah,
And she's just so pure, and, that's what I wanna capture. I wanna capture her not performing, and it's
right.
funny that this social media content that is doing so well is literally a performance, and how this, attraction to the trauma of childhood is also being used to sell at the same time aspirational motherhood.
Right.
And that's an
Right.
interesting contradiction.
Yeah, it's very like, "Look at me being such a doting mother taking care of my sick or distressed child," and a lot of it revolves around this idea of, like, "Mamas, trust your instincts, like, if you
Mhm,
think something's wrong with your baby, like, something is wrong," and, not that I disagree with that as a concept, but it's just, like, to sell your version of motherhood by showing your child in distress is, like, very strange to me, and, like, I truly do feel a lot of empathy for the creators that I write about in this book. I'm not one of those people who thinks every family vlogger and mom influencer is evil, immoral, and a bad parent. I'm
mhm,
I'm not. Um, but some of the decisions are really difficult for me to understand. Like, when your child is in distress and your instinct is to record it, and then not only to record it, but to upload it and let millions of people see it, that's really difficult for me to understand. Like, I don't know. I don't know, I just don't get it. I get a lot of things, or at least I can understand if I were in a different position, maybe I would make a different decision, but that I really struggle with.
I think you give a lot of grace and a lot of empathy
Thank you.
for the people you report on, and I think it's important because I think it's important to understand what everything is contextualized, right? Or we it needs to be contextualized. It's like, oh, it's really easy to pass judgment on a kind of choice if you're not considering the kinds of constraints in which
Right.
you're operating and those choices are being made. And so I think a good thing that you're doing here is like making that very, very clear. I
Yeah.
think the thing that really strikes me is why why does aspirational motherhood wind up then kind of doubling down on the constraints? Like the fantasy, it's selling you
Yeah.
more of what makes this so hard to begin with. And then maybe it's just what we said before that like that's what you can monetize.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
why is it attractive to people watching it?
You know, I think about this because when I sold this book, I was 7 months pregnant with my first, and when I turned in the first draft, I was 7 months postpartum. So I was in the thick of postpartum when I was writing it. And I have a wonderful, village around me, as they say. I live on the same street as my sister. I have a part-time nanny. My husband is amazing. My mother and my mother-in-law take turns coming and helping me with the baby. I mean, I have it made, right? But still, I felt so isolated. I felt so alone. I felt like it was me and my baby against the world and that no one understood what my life was now, that it was nap schedules and breastfeeding and pumping and, worrying about milestones. And a lot of what I felt was that nobody was reflecting that back to me. But
Mhm.
then I went online and I would see these mom influencers and these family vloggers, and they were in the thick of motherhood too. And even though they were showing me this beautiful, perfect version of it, at least it was reflecting something of the experience back to
Mhm.
me. Like I didn't feel like I was the only woman on earth going through postpartum in that moment.
Mm. You also talk about how there's some research showing people being attracted to this kind of content in the face of precarity, not just postpartum precarity, but like
Yeah.
the world, the world we live
Right.
in, and the economic insecurity that is just everywhere now.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, right? Like you look around, you look at this country, it feels like everyone is like out of work or like looking for a job. And we're all worried that AI is going to take our jobs. And even if you have a job, your wages aren't keeping up with the cost of living. And then you look around and you see the people who are living well. And like, other than like, billionaires and athletes and celebrities, it's influencers, right?
Mhm.
Like, I feel like influencing is the new American dream because it promises that you can be plucked out of obscurity and financial precarity and into this life that is so stable and so calm and so aspirational. And so it makes sense to me that at this time when many Americans feel so unstable, that they would look to these creators who are saying, "Hey, I've got it all handled. And not only that, but I look beautiful while doing it. And not only that, but my 6 children are all always in matching outfits and perfectly behaved." Like, is that not the dream?
Mm. It feels and maybe it's because I know too much, but it feels to me like that is as much accessible to people as becoming a professional athlete. And I wonder, why do you think that people think that's more attainable?
Well, I think it is more attainable
Mm,
because, like, anyone really could become a family vlogger or a mom influencer. Like, it's not easy, and it's
mhm,
not like if you try, you're gonna get it. But, like, to be a professional athlete, you have to be, like, incredibly gifted at a sport and have spent your entire life doing it. But to be a family vlogger or a mom influencer, you have to, like, have at least 1 child and pick up a camera, right? Like,
mhm,
it's like the barrier to entry is so much lower, and it really does feel like we all in some way are playing the viral lottery where we're just like
mhm.
posting things and like maybe it'll go viral and change our lives, and these people aren't any different.
Well, let's talk a little bit about barrier to entry because you do write a little bit about the performance of a kind of motherhood that is
Yeah.
being rewarded here, and that isn't accessible to everyone equally. And there's certainly a lot of racial dynamics, class dynamics, and a lot of what we see being portrayed being often a picture of wealth more than womanhood. And
Right.
so I'm curious, what you make of those, class and racial dynamics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because I think many family vloggers and mom influencers don't start out portraying wealth. They
Mm,
start out portraying, "Oh, I'm a regular mom just like you, and I'm budgeting and I'm, buying things secondhand and like that kind of thing." And then as they get more and more popular, they start to make more and more money. And then they're showing this kind of like more aspirational, wealth driven content. The racial dynamics of family vlogging and mom influencing are really troubling. I mean, In a way, it's like many other industries where white women are the gold standard, you know, and not only that, but white blonde women
Mhm.
often. Um, and it's just a reflection of our greater society in that way.
Yeah. Um, you write a little bit about the spending on plastic surgery and how much that spending is concentrated where you also have the greatest concentration of these momfluencers.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it really speaks to how much of what we call aspirational is really about compliance with a very restrictive ideal of what a mother is allowed to do, look like, and be. And I wonder if you are seeing any meaningful pushback to that from within those communities.
I mean, do you watch Secret Lives of Mormon Wives?
I don't, but I read the discourse
Yeah,
though.
you're, like, aware of the so it's interesting because, like, I think about those women, right, who started as Mormon mommy vloggers, right?
Yeah.
And now in the 2nd season of their show, there was this scene where one of the moms says, "How many of you are the breadwinners of your family?" And this is the Mormon religion, which is incredibly patriarchal, right? And they
Mhm.
all raise their hands. And it's, like, so fascinating because in this case, and in many cases, mom influencing is a way out of the patriarchal structure, but it's also reinforcing it, right? So it's like I have this question in the book of like, is mom influencing a feminist act? Because it's taking unpaid and unseen labor and it's making it seen and paid. But it's also like you're selling the performance of the labor of motherhood and you're selling it to other mothers and it's making them feel like terrible mothers because
Mhm.
they're not, you know, conforming to this ideal platonic ideal of what a mother is supposed to be. So, like, how is that feminist to be making money off of teaching other moms to be like, you know what I mean? Like, it just
I do. You know, the thing that strikes me is that you could create this kind of content and make it explicitly feminist. Like, you could basically create the same content with a caption that said, "Now let's all get universal basic income and healthcare."
yeah.
And,
There are some mom influencers who are doing that. It's interesting because there was a Guardian article that was like, "The right wing has won mommy bloggers," and I, like, don't actually agree with that
Mhm.
because there's really been this surge in, like, leftist kind of mommy bloggers, who are sharing, like, "Hey, we're against ICE, we're against
Yeah.
this, we are for these things," like, more leftist causes, but they don't do as well as apolitical mommy vloggers, and an apolitical mommy vlogger is almost like you can look at her and you can say, "Okay, she doesn't talk about politics, but her life is conservative coded," you know?
I mean, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about kind of the hidden institutional support from whether it's, the church that funds it or the algorithms that favor that content, because I think that's really missing from the conversation. There's this idea that the rise of this version of it is all completely natural. And it's like,
Right.
if I really wanted to advance my own self-interest for money, I would not be writing about feminism, right?
Right. Same.
Because it's the surest way to, have no money.
Yeah.
There's no money in it. There's no institutional support, and there's just not an ecosystem, or even, within the media world, there's not a ton of major support. Um, so it is interesting to hear you talk about, these people who are trying to leverage the aesthetic into a different message. And I wonder if I- do you see a world in which the incentive structures change that gets to be the aspirational version?
No.
Yeah. I don't I
Not now, at least. I mean,
Yeah.
as the pendulum of culture is swinging so rightward and conservative coded and trad wives are surging at no, I don't. I wish, but no.
I do wonder if you've spoken to anybody who either consumes this content or used to consume this content, who has had a kind of break out of that mindset.
I think it's more personal when people break out of the mindset, and I think it's more like an it's less that they're like, "Oh, the promise of trad wifedom is a lie," and it's more the promise of this mom influencer is a lie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's like, this is aspirational content, but it actually makes me feel terrible, and it makes me feel like a bad mother, and it
Mhm.
makes me a worse mother because of how I'm feeling about myself.
Right, right. If I was buying into what they were selling, I would imagine that I would experience motherhood through a framework of comparison as opposed to experiencing motherhood through a framework of care, or even experiencing motherhood as a performance through
Yeah,
experiencing motherhood as care. I've been thinking about this a lot because my daughter was born right around Thanksgiving. So she's had 2 birthdays now and I've never done anything. And then I go walk around the park in the
yeah.
summertime, and there are, like, these gorgeous balloon
Ye
arches
Oh
and
my
all
god, the balloon arches.
and these aren't even influencers. This is just the basic day-to-day
Yeah,
performance of parenting, and I just think, wow, um, I can't imagine if I was immersed in that on my phone every single day of what everyone else is doing and then what I'm doing, because I don't have the experience of feeling like a bad mom or mom guilt because I'm very aware that nobody does more for my kid
yeah,
than I do.
yeah.
So, I do wonder, what kind of ecosystems or what kinds of shifts in the environments that we're surrounded by enable more people to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you've heard from any of the audiences of those other kinds of creators who, what about it resonates for them?
I think it's just that a little bit of what we talked about earlier, that it's motherhood reflected back at them.
Mhm,
And motherhood and being a mother can feel so invisible and alienating and isolating. And, I feel like everyone loves you when you're pregnant, but then when you're postpartum, it's like you're on your own,
mm,
And so at least they can get online and they can see other mothers talking about nap schedules and bottle feeding versus breastfeeding and, all the things that are taking up all the space in their mind. Because, like, I feel like after I had my baby, my world stopped, but the greater world just like kept spinning. And I was like, wait, you forgot about me.
That reminds me of the beginning of your book, where you talk about the what preceded the current iteration of mom influencers, which you point out is incredibly aesthetic driven. Where before we had mommy bloggers, and
Yeah.
that was really about people going deep into not so much showcasing just an aspirational vision of motherhood or even just their children, but rather, kind of mining the depths of the
Yeah.
emotional experience of matrescence, if
Mhm.
you may. So, can you talk a little bit about that difference?
Yeah, I mean, the original mommy bloggers were writing multi thousands of word essays on the emotional toll of infertility and miscarriages and potty training, and they I think the biggest difference, other than the fact that the early mom bloggers were text based and they were not image based, and so that made them just by definition a lot less aesthetic. Also, for the first few years they weren't profitable at all. There was no way to profit off of these blogs, and so it was kind of like, it was almost like this precious thing that they were doing for themselves and for each other because there was no expectation of profit. And then it's also that, y they were the main characters, the mothers,
Mhm.
and the children were almost like side characters that just, like, factored in, but they factored in only as far as they affected the main character, you know? But
Mhm.
now it's interesting because when I ask women who they liked from the original mom bloggers, they say, "Oh, I loved Heather Armstrong," or "Oh, I loved Natalie Jean Levin." And when you ask people what mom influencers they like, they talk about the kids of the mom influencers.
Mm, yes. I mean, that it comes back to a theme I've been thinking about a lot is just what happens when our aspirations are primarily driven by aesthetics
Yeah.
for anything and what things look like as opposed to how they feel or how we experience them, um, or what they cost or what those aesthetics cost.
Yeah.
And so, as we're talking about this move into the aesthetic world of momfluencers, how do you think, on this macro level, that is reshaping our ideas of motherhood and life and success?
I mean, we're thinking about what it looks like, right? And
Mhm.
so instead of how it feels, we're thinking about, do my children look perfect? Are they perfectly matching? Are they not pulling these perfect pigtails that I put in out? Do I look perfect while I'm hand making baby food, which I never did, or baking sourdough bread for dinner tonight? Like everything has to look perfect instead of the focus on how are we getting through this incredibly difficult period of having young children and being postpartum?
And what an added layer of labor to put on top of something that's already so labor and time intensive. I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons I didn't opt into the aesthetics of motherhood was not because of anything about, like, my value system. It's just that I was so overwhelmed and I'm
Yeah.
already ADHD, and so it's like, it's a miracle if I can just get through what I need to get through in terms of food and
Totally.
stuff. So thinking about how it looks, it's just not even in my brain. So I I do think, is this a way of making motherhood even more labor intensive? And to kinda go back to the, like, point you made at the top of, okay, if we're promoting an ideal in which, or system in which the only way to get ahead as a mom is to, like, make money, is to make content that promotes this aspirational motherhood that then makes motherhood even more labor intensive for
Yeah.
other women. Like, you do have a pretty effective playbook for forcing women out of public life, I think, except for the content piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is incredibly labor intensive to live up to the ideals and standards of motherhood as set by mom influencers. I mean, I remember watching vlogs of women with their newborns and they like had their hair and makeup done and like my daughter, again, is a few months from turning 2, and I, like, just started doing my hair and makeup daily, like and some days it still doesn't happen, and I'm like, "How were they doing this with newborns?" And, like, getting up to, like, get the camera ready and move the tripod and film everything, like, on top of how much labor they were doing the labor of performing that labor and recording it and editing it and presenting it.
And I think that for me just goes to this idea of what does the performance of ideal motherhood actually cost, both on the micro level and on the macro level. So on this micro level, we're talking about, okay, the time you spend putting your makeup on postpartum is time you're not recovering, is time you're not just chilling with the baby or with
Yeah,
family or with whatever else. Um, Also on the micro level, the cost of the children's well-being as mom gets to position herself as, or is positioned as, the hero, to a
yeah,
child's emotional meltdown that is monetizable. Those are like these individual costs, but then, can you take us maybe through maybe what are some of the bigger cultural costs of this?
yeah. I think it's just reducing women to this position where we are only worth our motherhood
Mm,
and we are only worth what that motherhood looks like and
uh,
how we can perform it and show it to people and how beautiful it is. Um, that's really troubling to me, especially in this time with like the pronatalist, like birth movement and, the vice president and president ascribing to that. And that I mean, that's a whole entire other conversation, but it's like, how are you gonna tell women stay home and have more babies when there are, like, no social safety nets for us when we do that? And,
mm,
like, the majority of American women are back at work within, like, 2 to 4 weeks of giving birth. I mean, how it just doesn't make any sense.
right. And for For you as, a mother who is also pregnant and who has been reporting this book through this whole process,
Yeah.
how is the reporting you've done landing with you in your own parenting journey?
It's difficult. I think what's really fascinating about it is that becoming a mother while reporting this book made me both more sensitive to the plight of the children and also more sympathetic in a way to the parents. Because when my daughter was born, I realized that I would do anything on earth to give her a good life. And so, in a way, I can understand that these parents are looking around and making their calculations and thinking, okay, if I have to trade privacy for all of this financial stability, that's a choice that I'm willing to make.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's made me so sensitive to the children because, I mean, you know how it is after you become a mom, like, every child just, like, pulls at your heartstrings.
Mhm.
And so seeing videos where mom influencers are posting to millions of viewers, their kid crying or screaming or upset, I'm just like, I want to, like, hold that child and I want to, like, take the camera away, you know? So it's, like, this weird dichotomy where I was pulled in both directions.
Mm. Well, I wanna just say thank you for taking the time in your book launch process and being pregnant and having a
Yeah.
toddler. I mean, wow. I don't really understand how you do that. I know people say that about moms all the time, but I really
Yeah.
don't understand how you do
Thank
that.
you.
I think, yeah, moms I don't like to do, like, the superhero mom thing, but the
I
amount
know, but it's
of labor
true.
women carry, it's
Yeah,
bananas, and
yeah.
it's not easy, and it's really not beautiful either.
No, most of the time it's not.
Yeah, it's not, and I wish, I guess I wish that things could be aspirational even if they weren't aesthetic. I mean, I think they are, it's just, like, that's not how we consume our worlds.
Yeah,
Consume our worlds through these aesthetic platforms like phones, and so
right.
no, this is like the question I'm struggling with is I don't know what it takes for us to ground, the an aspirational lifestyle that isn't really predicated on fantasies or exploitation or all of these other things we've been talking about.
I don't either. I think
Yeah,
it's also a lot to ask of individual creators to share
totally.
that the reality of motherhood. I mean, I even feel that way. I don't share much about my own motherhood online, but now because of how sick I've been with this pregnancy, I've had to share a little bit because I can't hide it anymore. And it is very difficult. Like I'm proud because people are telling me like, "Oh, thank you for not showing just like a perfect pregnancy." But on the other hand, it's really difficult to be that vulnerable. And so I don't know that we can ask creators to like take up that mantle, you
I
know?
agree. Yes, yeah. Um, and you do write about in the book, like, the amount of backlash you're kinda subject to no matter what you do, no matter
Yeah.
how you perform, and that's something obviously I write about, like, even in the non-performance of things, no matter what you do as a mom, as a woman, like, you are doing it wrong in this world.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so, I just really appreciate that you speak to the tensions of these things in this book.
Yeah.
It's called, of course, I'm holding it upside down, Like, Follow, Subscribe, Influencer Kids, and the Cost of a Childhood Online. Thank you, Fortessa. Happy book launch.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I hope everyone enjoys it as much as you did.
I hope so too, and I think they will, so you can go pre-order it now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.